So one of the important things of programming is being able to have your program determine what steps it takes in its execution and how its execution plays out through the course of its execution. So in this case, we do that through if and else statements, as you can see right here. So this is an example, a very basic example of if and else statements. So first, the computer asks the user for a number to guess. So the user does that. And then we get to this if statement here. And what the if statement does is that it checks to see if the condition in between the parentheses evaluates to true. So in this case, the variable mynum is that equal to 5. And if it is, the computer will go, okay, I'm going to execute this code block down here. So it will output, how'd you know? And if that's not true, then it will find the following else statement, if there is one, not required, but and then it will execute what's there. And so it'll say, ha, that's not my number. So that's pretty basic. You can have a multiple line if statement. It doesn't have to be a single line. As a matter of fact, you'd probably find yourself depressed if it were restricted to one line. If you needed to use multiple lines, then you would use these curly brackets. And then you can have multiple line if statement. Note how the if statement itself does not have a semicolon after that, because the if statement is technically followed by all of what is inside the if statement. So that's why that's not there. Same case with the else. It is possible to have multiple conditions when checking in an if. To do this, you'd use your and or operators. So say, as an example, you wanted the number to be in between 5 and 7. So it's going to be greater than or equal to 5. And the and operator is your double ampersand. That's and. And you say mynum is less than or equal to 7. And then so if it's 5, 6, or 7, then it will execute this. If not, it will execute that. One thing to note, I know in math, sometimes they teach you a kind of shorthand way to write compound inequalities like that. So this would be, so you might see this like that in math. This is not valid syntax in programming. This will not work. Your compiler will yell at you. You have to use this format up here. So, no, don't do that. If you have a bool like this up here, and you want to check it in an if statement, say to see if it's true or not, it is valid to do this. That's totally fine, but it's a lot faster and easier if you just give it the name of the bool. Because this is already a true or false value, you don't need to check it against a true or false value. So this will evaluate to true if it's true or false if it's false. If you want to run what's in the if statement if the bool were false, then you just put the not symbol in front of that, and that will make it evaluate to the opposite of what it is. Finally, the more advanced use of if and else statements is if you had, like, for example, a series of choices and you wanted to execute something different for each of them. So say you gave the user an option of 1, 2, or 3. So you would start it out just like you normally would, and so you'd write your code for your first option, which is 1. So if mynum equals 1, you'd run this in here and say you found a lazy cat. You found my cat. And then after that you would have just another else. But the difference here is that you have an if immediately following that, so that So when the computer runs through this, if it's not 1, it's going to run here and say if it were 2. not 3, 2. So say if it ran through here, okay, that's not true. It goes to the else statement, and then immediately has to check another number. So it's going to see, okay, if it's 2, then I have to run this. You found a pile of gold. Don't tell anyone. Not even me. And again, these actually aren't strictly necessary. Only if you have multiple lines. So in that case, this will only run if it's 2, and then you would do one for your third option. Not 4, 3. You would say, you found nothing. And then at the end, you would have this else statement will execute if the user does not input what you wanted it. So something that you can't foresee and don't plan on writing code for, it would go into here and say, okay, input. You would say, okay, that was not an option. So it's pretty simple. That's if statements. Up next is loops.